Welcome back to the Two Blues podcast and to this season's first instalment of Youth Watch, a series that will be taking a look at the Chelsea development squad, the under-21s, some of the most promising young talents to be playing and coming out of Cobham at the moment, the players that will be looking to make an impact on this first team in the next couple of seasons. Of course, Tyrique George is number one candidate. He is the prospect that we are all hoping to make a breakthrough into the first team this year. Capped off an impressive display against Brentford with a hat-trick, a second-half hat-trick in a 6-3 win the other day. That's the game that we are really going to be kind of looking at. There has only been one Premier League 2 game so far this year, a 3-1 win against Middlesbrough, courtesy of a Jimmy J. Morgan hat-trick, 2 Tyrique George assists for Jimmy J. Morgan in that game. But last week, or Sunday should I say, a 6-3 win in the English Premier League Cup for the under-21s over Brentford, 2-1 down at half-time, 5 goals in the second half, 3 in 14 minutes, 3 goals for Tyrique George, 3 assists for Harvey Vale, who a lot of people thought might be playing in Saudi Arabia this season, but a very, very positive start for a lot of those youngsters. A goal for David Washington, an assist, and an impressive game, not just an assist, an impressive game and from Brodi Hughes, Ato Ampah as well. Some real talents in this Chelsea side, Keanu Dyer as well as Achimpong. Players that have been involved on the periphery, on the fringes of this Chelsea squad in the last season or so. But there is a real promise about this Chelsea youth team. And while, there's never a dull day, never a dull minute with these under-21s. The first half and the second half against Brentford was chalk and cheese. It really looked like a different team out there. Once they click, once they start playing football, some of the football they play is sensational. But of course, as there are with a lot of under-21s, a lot of mistakes, lapses of concentration, which will be punished in the top leagues. When you make that step up to the first team, a player playing in the under-21s cannot make the same mistakes for the first team that he can for the under-21s. But just having a quick look, like I said, this will be this is our first episode this season, so this is kind of just going to be an outlook. Who do we think is going to have a top season? Who are we most excited to see? And who do we think will break through into the first team? We will be bringing you an episode of this every week where we will be kind of breaking down the results, breaking down the form, looking at a couple of the players on loan as well. Obviously, we've got Ronnie Stutter on loan at Burton Albion. We've got Leo Castledine on loan at Shrewsbury as well. A couple of players that I'm hoping are going to have big impacts in the lower leagues in England, English football this season. But we are obviously focusing primarily on the under-21s, the development squad. They play a lot of different competitions. I was having a quick look through all of the fixtures as well as the results. Obviously, like I said, one win so far in the Premier League 2, which was against Middlesbrough. We obviously played against Brentford in the English Premier League Cup. They also have the EFL Trophy, the Premier League International Cup. There are a lot of different competitions for these under-21s or for this development squad, and there should be a lot of good tests in there as well. Playing against young teams like Anderlecht. I know it's the under-21 side, but Anderlecht, notoriously good youth system coming out of Belgium, one of the best systems coming out of Belgium. It's going to be a good opportunity. Real Sociedad as well in the International Cup, no doubt. They're going to have a lot of young, talented Spanish players. Sporting Lisbon, young, talented Portuguese players. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for these Chelsea, these Chelsea youngsters to wet their beak in a competition that they haven't really had much of a taste in. A lot of these players, while they do play 2-3 years, there are quite a few players who are kind of just coming into the side, just filling in gaps that have been left by players like Leo Castledine, Ronnie Stutter. But we will start on Tyrique George because he is the main player. He is the one to watch this season. Whereas Arsenal have Ethan Nwaneri, Miles Lewis-Skelly, United have Kobe Mainoo, Manchester City have Rico Lewis Oscar-Bob. We have Tyrique George, who is the latest in a long line of successful academy graduates. You look at some of the players that have come out of Chelsea in the last few years, and you look at the spread of Chelsea academy graduates playing around Europe. Looking at that AC Milan team the other night against Liverpool, 5 of them used to play for Chelsea, 3 of whom were Chelsea academy graduates in Tomori, Tammy Abraham and Ruben Loftus-Cheek. We have so many quality young players plying their trade at the top level, and I've said for a long time, the wing positions is, we have a great a great range of depth in the wings at the moment. Chelsea are obviously investing heavily with a view to the future in terms of, Kendry Pires, Esteval Willian, all these 17, 18-year-olds, 16, some of them, that will be coming into the squad in 2025. They're going to be looking to kind of break in and stamp a name for themselves on this team at a similar time as Tyrique George. This kind of is his season to really make a mark, and it's tough, and I do feel for him a little bit because obviously we've gone out, spent money on Neto, Felix, and Jadon Sancho, all three of whom can operate in those wide roles. Two or three, you would argue, their first and foremost position is out on that left. I do kind of worry that Tyrique George may not have the path to progression that was there last season. Obviously, he was included in included on the bench in a couple of games, taken with us to America in the pre-season tour. I thought he was class against Wrexham. I thought he looked very, very sharp. I think he looks dangerous, very, very skillful. His decision making's good. I think he's a fantastic player. And while I am slightly concerned about the lack of progression, the lack of a clear path of progression for him, I do not doubt that he has the talent, he has the ability to show his value, to show Enzo Maresca why he deserves to be playing and why he deserves to be part of this team. I've been a couple of weeks ago against the Bournemouth game. I was saying if Gusto and Reece James aren't fit, I'd like to see Achimpong. I'd like to see, particularly in this era of Chelsea where we are still, I wouldn't say we're as much in transition as last season or the season before, but we're still, a team that is not quite at the top. We're still a team that is trying to find our identity. And while we are not challenging, no one can argue we're not. We may well be towards the end of the season if we can get some sort of consistency together, but at the moment I wouldn't expect us to challenge for the title. So these seasons are the seasons where you do think, right, we have an opportunity here to bed a player like Tyrique George in, give them those crucial minutes, much like Alfie Gilchrist last year. You give them the crucial minutes, the taste of first team football, they bed themselves into the squad, make a name for themselves with the fan base, and then you can send them out on loan to a top club, be it a Championship club, a Premier League club, someone in the top tier of European football. You can send them out, they can ply their trade at a top club, know how to do it, come back, fit straight in. I do kind of worry, obviously we know, and we've heard reports this week that Esteval Willian has reiterated he wants to be in a number 10 role when he comes in, and we've been told from the get-go that Kendry Pires and Esteval Willian will both be in the first team when they join in 2025. It puts pressure on players like Madueke, Mudryk. I'm not going to say puts a pressure on a player like Cole Palmer because there's no way Cole Palmer's getting dropped, but it puts pressure on a lot of these young players with long contracts when we're essentially buying replacements for them. And, we're essentially planning a contingency plan 2 years in advance. It is a little bit kind of scary to think for a lot of these youngsters. But at the same time, I've got to double down and say I think Tyrique George is completely capable of battling against and competing against players like Esteval Willian. I haven't seen Esteval Willian do very much that I don't think Tyrique George could do. I think, he's got the natural flair, he's got the natural skill, he's got the natural elastic touch, when you just cannot get the ball off someone. But yeah, I think Tyrique George, I'd back into the hills. I think he's got talent pouring out of his ears. I think he's an absolute superb player, buckets of quality, and yeah, I really hope, he is definitely my one to watch this season. I think it was something like 20 goals in all comps last year. He got 2 assists in the first game, 3 goals in the second, 5 goal contributions in 2 games. Stats aside, you can look at his style of play. He looks like, I touched very briefly on his decision making. He looks like a mature individual. He looks like he's got a good head on his shoulders. He looks like he's a good professional. He's not someone that is easily impacted, easily affected by the media, by kind of the PR that's going on around him. You see a lot of things in social media talking about him, gassing him up, but seems like he's very humble. He's got his head stuck to the ground. Fair play. Long may that continue. And yeah, anybody that hasn't already, I'd be very, very surprised if there is a single Chelsea fan watching this that doesn't know who Tyrique George is. But if you don't, hit up those YouTube comps, man. Go and watch the Chelsea Brentford game. He had a fantastic impact, and I have no doubt will be a huge player for Chelsea this season. Not just the youth team. I'm hoping, come later stages of the Carabao Cup. I'm hoping Conference League. I would like George to be involved in the cup competitions quite heavily this year. I was going to say in some capacity, but quite heavily, not just off the bench. I want him to get some starts in those games. But obviously Tyrique George got a hat-trick of goals. Harvey Vale with a hat-trick of assists. Harvey Vale was a very, very interesting one. He was linked with a move to Saudi in the summer. He's only 21 years old as well. So he's a player that he made his debut with Thomas Tuchel in 21-22. So that's 3 years ago. So at 18 years, I think he might have even been 17 at the time. But at the time, we were thinking this is Chelsea's next player. This is our next youth. Next academy graduate, this is the one that's going to break through next. At that time we had Hudson-Odoi, we had quite a few players, we had Gehi, we had quite a few players doing, Tomori, we had quite a few players performing very, very well under Thomas Tuchel. I think he made 5 apps, all in domestic cup appearances. Nothing too fantastic, but similar again to Gilchrist. It was the natural path of progression. We saw him breaking through, thought that next season might be the one for him. And it didn't. He's had a couple of loan moves since. Last season was very strange. He went to Bristol Rovers in League One with Joey Barton. Played while Joey Barton was manager. He played him at left back. He's obviously he's a winger. Predominantly on the right wing as well. He can play either side, but he's an attacking midfielder. But I think with Bristol, he was utilised in 6 different roles or 6 different positions. Joey Barton utilised him at left back until he was sacked. Then he moved into attacking midfield, started to rack up the goals, started to rack up the assists. I think he got something like, it was 3 goals and 6 assists. I've just checked my stats. 3 goals and 6 assists in 47 appearances. He had the second highest amount of minutes of any Chelsea player on loan last season, 3,541. Minutes of action, and showed that he was a lot more versatile than I think we'd given him credit for. Whatever Joey Barton saw utilising him at left back, he hadn't been done before. I don't think, he may have played there in youth ranks, but hadn't been utilised there in a professional capacity. And the fact that he's been able to play in 6 different roles, 6 different positions, yes, he didn't blow anybody away, but the fact he played 47 appearances shows that they were relying on him. It wasn't just a bit part he was playing in that squad, bit part role. He played a large part. And it will be interesting to see where he goes, because obviously linked with Saudi Arabia this year, apparently he was the one that turned it down. There was supposedly a deal, an undisclosed fee was agreed. Or personal terms were never agreed. So the deal, fell off. The deal moved on. Al Attifaq moved on. But it will be interesting to see what sort of season he has, whether he does stay with the youth team, whether he does go on loan. I'd like to see him kind of get a championship loan, but I think Harvey Vale is probably one of those that might be looking at getting a fee and cashing in on him next year. But I'm very interested to see how he does this season, and it'd be interesting to see where he's utilised as well. If they do try him out in defence as well as playing him in an attacking midfield role, or they just stick to what they know, which may well be what they do. But obviously mentioned very briefly, David Washington scored a fantastic goal. Interesting to see how he does. I was under the impression that we had sold him this summer for I think someone said it was Strasbourg. Maybe it was Strasbourg. Maybe it was another club. I was under the impression we had sold him for a minimal fee this year. Obviously we've got Mark Yu, who's virtually a like-for-like replacement in terms of profile. Interesting. That's just one to keep an eye on. I had to do a double take when I saw his name flash up and saw that it was him, and the commentator said David Washington. I had to double check, but he's a quality player. I still think if we can hang on to him, I still think there could potentially be a situation where he creeps back into the Chelsea squad, particularly with the amount of young Brazilians coming through. However, I do feel like Mark Yu, in terms of profile, very, very similar. So I can't see them having 2 of them. It's going to be either one. Unfortunately, academy training ground ain't big enough for the 2 of them. But David Washington with a goal, Ato Ampah with an assist. Debatable, unlucky not to be claiming a goal. It was an own goal, and I think it was just off target. But great body strength as well for the third and final Tyrique George goal. I think it was Ato Ampah, who held it up, gave it to Vale, who then put it across for Tyrique George. But Ampah, I think he looks similar to how kind of Tyrique George looks a little bit further ahead in terms of his decision making, in terms of his footballing brain and his ability. I think Ato Ampah, in terms of his physicality, he's a lot more ready for a loan move or a lower league loan move than a lot of these youngsters. I think I'd like to see a little bit more of him in the under-21s this season, but I also do feel like a lot of these youngsters, we need to send them out on loan to non-league or to lower league clubs as soon as possible to boost up their physicality, to get them ready for the nature, the physicality of the English game or the Premier League of men's football. So Ampah is a player that really stood out for me in terms of his strength, his hold-up play. I think, Chelsea have always liked a physical number 9, a target man, Didier Drogba, Diego Costa, Olivier Giroud, just to name the 3 most successful recent strikers for Chelsea. All of them have been great technical ability and great ball striking and great finishers, but first and foremost, big, strong target man. Win the ball in the air, hold it up, lay it off. All 3 of those have been fantastic at that. And while Ampah isn't as physically imposing in terms of his stature, I think, physical ability and strength, be interesting to see how he does this season. And then the last one that I want to just mention and keep an eye on is Brodi Hughes at right back. He was unlucky not to get 2 assists because Ampah, his goal was turned into an assist. Brodi Hughes would have got the assist for that, but a great assist. I think it was for Tyrique. It might have been for David Washington. No, that was for Vale. Maybe it was for Washington. I can't remember. Whoever Hughes assisted, he's a marauding right back. I like the look of him. We've produced some quality fullbacks, some quality defenders in recent years, but fullbacks, Livramento, Hall, Reece James, just to name a couple. Brodi Hughes looks akin to, great 1v1 defensively, loves to bomb forward, puts a great delivery into the box. 3 big ticks for me: distribution, work rate, defending. Obviously the primary for a right back, and while everybody gets hung up on the whole Trent debate and how good he is at distribution, whatever, the primary function of a right back is defending. If you can't defend, you shouldn't be a right back, you should be a midfielder. Hughes can play centre back, left back, right wing back, wherever he wants. Defending of an out and out defender, distribution of a modern day defender, work rate, he's a workhorse, work rate of a of a top level player. I think Brodi Hughes is another one in that defence. Obviously we've got Achimpong. There's a couple of players that I think will maybe break through before him just because of the nature of the team and who we've got in our system at the moment. Obviously we've got Vega who can operate as that fullback as well. We've got Disasi, Achimpong. We have got a few players who can fill in on the right. So I don't know if we will see Brodi Hughes in the first team, but he is one that I've got a big eye on this year. And in terms of one to watch, I'd say he's my second player that I'm intently watching this year. Tyrique George is number 1. There are other players in there, Keanu Dyer, that I do want to keep an eye on. Frankie Runham, Jimmy J. Morgan, Vale, Washington, but Brodi Hughes, I think, big future ahead of him. And definitely a big season for him this year. But we've overrun a little bit, apologies again, but I think that just about wraps it up for this week. We will be, like I said, making this a weekly occurrence. We are playing next, or the under-21s, are playing next on Saturday, same day as the men's team. We are obviously playing West Ham on Saturday, which we will be bringing you a full live match reaction as always. So please make sure, like, comment, subscribe, turn the notifications on as well. As soon as the final whistle of any Chelsea game, unless I'm at the game, as soon as the final whistle goes on any Chelsea game, come to this channel. Make sure you tune in for the live match reactions. Get involved in the chat. I will be dropping a Loan Watch tomorrow as well. We're going to be going through a week of hell for Gabriel Slonina after the start of a lifetime to his career at Barnsley, getting turned over 7-0 at Old Trafford. Can't have been very motivating, but they need to bounce back on Saturday. We've got Andre Santos winning the Young Player of the Month for Strasbourg as well, which is fantastic. But like I said, we'll get more into that in Loan Watch tomorrow. We're also going to be bringing you game week roundups next week. We're going to be bringing you guests. I'm going to get Charms back involved, hopefully. If he watches the game, Mr. C Money, make sure you watch the game, not just the highlights. Spurs Live as well. We've got Scott from Onto the Ball. We've got a few people that we're trying to get involved on this channel on a regular basis. But guys, as always, we need your support. So please make sure to like, comment, subscribe to the channel if you're not already. And we will be back tomorrow with more content for you.